Hello and welcome to Lee on the Lectionary. Today we're looking at the readings for the third Sunday of Lent in Year B, and they are Exodus 20 verses 1 to 17, 1 Corinthians 1 verses 18 to 25, and John 2 13 to 22. Our readings this week remind us that God's ways are not our ways, nor His thoughts our thoughts. What would Jesus do? WWJD. People often ask this question thinking it might provide guidance in a particular situation. As one born under the law, a perfectly obedient son, Jesus would of course always do what pleased his Father. His life was therefore in harmony at all times with the 10 Commandments, brought to us for the first time in Scripture in Exodus chapter 20, our Old Testament reading. Few people can recite these commandments anymore in any order, but they reveal to us the basic answer to WWJD. Now, it's customary to divide the commandments into two, those which speak of how to love and honour God, and those which flesh out how to love our neighbours as ourselves. These are prefaced by a covenant declaration. The commandments come from the God who has saved us and called us his own. That is why we serve him and not another, why we worship him as he thinks best and not as idolatrous humans might naturally prefer. It's why we hallow his sacred name, why we remember the Sabbath he set aside. He saved us from slavery to sin, that we might be a people who reflect his own glory, which is why we honour the institutions that he designed for our flourishing in a rightly ordered family life and a contented, truthful engagement in community relationships. Lives lived thus are appropriate for a kingdom of priests, a royal nation, and also for the king himself. But the law does not describe the natural inclination of the fallen human heart, which everywhere inverts that. There's an interesting 16th century typographic curiosity called the Wicked Bible. Here in Exodus chapter 20, this old edition of the Bible accidentally left out a word. And so it reads, "Thou shalt commit adultery." Funny thing is, we, like the Wicked Bible, by nature prefer always to admit the word not. Our gospel reading shows us how easily we turn the goodness of God into an opportunity for personal gain. The institution of the temple was God's gracious way of indicating his presence amongst his people, enabling them to approach and worship him, enjoying the revelation of his character and purposes. Instead, the Church of Jesus' day had turned it into a straightforward money spinner. They traded on the pious longings of God's people and were gripped by the consumerist impulse to take advantage of market forces. WWJD? Well, a whip of cords and overturned tables was the answer. Not because he submitted to an impatient iconoclastic urge, as we're sometimes tempted to do when things don't go our way, but because he was consumed by zeal for God's holy temple, as the scriptures prophesied. Purity must always surround the place where God dwells, the temple, the Messiah, his people. The temple traders certainly weren't expecting that. They thought they would be approved by God as purveyors of temple merchandise by appointment of the king. Yet the king was not pleased, because he doesn't think as we do. Their great expectations were for something altogether earthly and visceral. His kingdom was not of this world. Power and glory would be his, but through emptiness and ignominy and agony. As the collect puts it, he went not up to joy, but first he suffered pain, and entered not into glory before he was crucified. This was foolishness in the extreme. to the Corinthian mindset that may have been thrilled by Jesus' powerful oratory and carried away by his impressive zeal, but would balk at the cruciform path that he laid out for himself and his disciples. Jews demand signs, Greeks demand wisdom, says the Apostle Paul. WWJD? He died, decidedly and deliberately died. This was not the Corinthian strategy for advancement, as 1 Corinthians makes clear. They considered it dubious and perverse. But God tips us upside down and shakes our proud imaginations. His ways are not like our ways. In fact, they are the only hope for a crooked and depraved generation.